Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Accuracy in America. I'm your host, Don Irvine, joined by my co-host, Brian McNichol.
Good morning. Hello, deplorables, dregs, despicables, chumps, Neanderthals, semi-fascists, maggots, weirdos, and of course those dog-faced pony soldiers.
Yeah, that's actually a good idea. All right, hold on here. We'll add that to
the people with the pink hair and the 94 tattoos and all that are calling us weirdos, which I suppose in their world that we are.
Yeah, probably so. All right, so once again, viewers, I welcome any suggestions as to why I continue to get this echoey thing. I am now on an external Yeti mic, and that's still not doing it. So I've gone through the gamut, and I don't know what's going on. Maybe I need to call StreamYard, to figure out what the deal is. So thanks for bearing with me, and I'll try to talk as little as possible. All right.
So you have that to look forward to.
Yeah. They may be thankful for that. All right, so before we get into the politics in the U.S., we've got some international things going on here. First we have this strike that killed this Hamas leader in Iran, and that follows the Hezbollah leader in Beirut. Now, Israel took credit for the Beirut attack, but no one has claimed credit for the attack in Iran. As I read currently, and it does, kind of amp up the pressure, or just the whole makes the whole Middle East situation more of a powder keg, I guess.
Yeah, yes and no. I mean, I don't think it, unless it erupts into full on World War III, I don't know how it could be a lot hotter than it is right now. Israel's finding the guys who bring them harm, and they're imposing accountability on them. So, I'm not against it. I always thought that it was a bad. The United States has a law. We weren't supposed to assassinate people, and I see the reasoning behind it, and like it comes out of a thing that happened that shouldn't have happened. But Israel has no such law, and I think it's good. I think in their situation, taking out surgical strikes. I mean, they're under a lot of criticism for being indiscriminate in their use of force, right? And all the women and children they supposedly killed and whatnot in cleaning up the October 7 mess. So they go and they kill one guy in Lebanon, and like you say, we don't know about what happened to the guy in Iran. And so this is terrible too. Well, it's one guy who you can't argue is not responsible versus, indiscriminate killing of women and children. So what do you want them to do? Because they have a job here to finish, and what they're trying to do is to make sure that they don't have to do this again for a long time. So the world wants to criticize, and I guess there was an ICC ruling last week, maybe, where they said that Israel was engaged in genocide, war crimes, or whatever. Netanyahu is a war criminal, and whatnot. So they have the world is largely against them, and they have to protect their people. It's as you say, it's a tough neighborhood.
Yeah, it's not like the world will really miss these people. I mean, the terrorists will miss their leader, but the rest of us are like. Okay, I think at least silently, good. We take out another bad guy. I mean, I always struggle with this thing about. I'm not for killing the people in general. I don't really. But on the other hand, these are people who are responsible for a lot of killing, a lot of people, and therefore, I am not going to shed any tears over the loss of these guys.
Right, I'm with you. They brought a lot of misery into the world, deliberately, not accidentally. So yeah, let them do what they're gonna do.
Yeah, of course, you get, the other side of it for them is just like, oh, this is terrible. I think kind of what you're alluding to, and we've got to do something about this and whatnot. But in this case, Israel did, at least with the Beirut one, it was very targeted. And
Right.
we've been alive long enough to see a lot of targeted attacks during the cause of war, and this whole thing has been going on for 299, 300 days, just about. So this has been a slog that's just growing longer and longer. I mean, only right now, currently eclipsed by the 889 days of Ukraine and Russia, battling it out. So we've got a lot of turmoil in the world, and we've got such a great leader, on our side, has done such a great job in handling a lot of it. But there's a lot of things going on here that we're not used to having this much going on at the same time, I think.
Right. There's a pandemonium, and what's happening is, you said we weren't talking about the U.S. yet. But what's happening is absence of U.S. leadership, right? When Trump was in charge, whatever, say what you will, but the Middle East was quiet. Putin wasn't attacking his neighbors. All these things that are going on now weren't going on because he had these things to handle. He had the Arabs and the Jews aligned against the true bad guys in Iran, and he had Putin in a box and afraid to move. So. You have these things, now going on because the U.S. is viewed as under weak leadership, and it's time for all the bad guys to run out and play because the consequences, Trump gets back in, the consequences will be a lot different and a lot more severe and stark and immediate.
Yeah. All right. So, and we'll probably address this a little bit more as we get more into the Harris Trump things and stuff like which we're going to spend a lot of time on today. But we also have we had an election in Venezuela, and so Nicolas Maduro won re-election supposedly. There's a lot of controversy about that, which is not unusual considering the situation in Venezuela. I mean, what have we known for decades, really? Hugo Chavez and Nicolas Maduro, and any regimes like this, you have an opposition, somebody who runs and then they get disqualified or said you can't run and all these kinds of things. These are sham elections, if you can even call them elections. But there's a lot of, what's the situation in Venezuela? I mean, economically, it's horrible, isn't it?
Right. Well, so what has happened is, there was exit polls after the election showed that Maduro lost by 33 to 35 points. Right. So there's an analogy in the U.S. that we really need to think about here is, when Biden was in as the Democrat nominee, right, it was the margins of the election were so big, that you cannot lie about it. You cannot say, oh, it's closer than you think. And, when it, you add the votes at 4 a.m, whatever, wing, he's ahead. It's believable, right? It's close enough to where you're like, okay, could be, right? So in the case of Venezuela, it's a 33-point lead. That's not a polling error. That's not, that means the other guy won, right? Maduro lost. So, and everybody knows it. So what happens next? The military for now appears to be supporting him. Okay. That's the thing. The thing about this is like, and this is why, they take they want to take your guns. We're not giving up the guns. This is why. This is the thing that happens that we're not going to allow to happen by having guns, right? You're not going to be able to do this in the United States. They talk about, Trump wanted to do a coup or whatever. Trump wanted a closer look at the discrepancies. He wanted investigation and recounts to continue, right? And when they said no, he went home on time. He left early. In fact, he left a couple of days early, got out of their way, let them do what they wanted to do. right? So it's not the same. This is not what Trump was doing, but it is in a lot of ways what the Democrats are doing, right? It's just we're not going to allow the truth. We're going to kill anybody or sideline or jail or anybody that raises any stink about this and says these results don't add up, don't make sense. We are going to go after them. We're going to go punish them. So, there are some analogies to the U.S., but Maduro lost. I mean, it's pretty clear he lost. And, I don't know that the people go back in their cage this time. I think this time they stand their ground because they know they're right. And I don't know, I don't think that you can get your military to shoot the whole country. You can't get them to shoot everybody who thinks Maduro lost. Right? I don't think the military is going to go for that. So I think you're coming close to something where they're going to have to figure this out.
Yeah, I was trying to think. I think they got some reaction from neighboring countries about that as well, right?
Right. Yeah, that's true. That's what we're part of that. People in the region are part of that. I don't know if you saw that this morning. Chris Murphy, senator from Connecticut, is trying to make the case that we never would have had this election and we never would have had all this happen if Biden hadn't stood up for freedom in Venezuela. Biden, his way of standing up for freedom was he reduced the sanctions that Trump had put on him. Right, he let Maduro out of the bag and the economy improved and they had more money, and so the theory was he'll make the crowd happier and the crowd will vote for him. Well, the crowd did not vote for him. Right, so now you have a situation where we're in even worse shape than we were, and there's another situation that the Biden administration doesn't have a solution for.
Yeah, big surprise about that part. All right, so that kind of leads us into coming back.
I think I just before I was going to say, I think 20 years from now, 50 years from now, scholars who look back on the foreign policy of this decade will conclude that the Biden people were children playing in sandboxes. That it was that bad.
Yeah, I mean, I don't agree with that. I mean, this is we've suffered through what 3.5 years. It's been terrible overall.
One catastrophe after another, one self-inflicted wound after another. Our influence in the world has never been lower. The dollar is not this currency anymore. Our sanctions mean nothing because everyone defies them. We've been cleaved of leadership of Europe, right? We don't have a leadership role really in Europe anymore. They'll take our money, but are you really going to stand in there and are we really going to work together on stuff? That's not really what's happening, right?
Yeah, absolutely. All right, so turning our attention back to us here in the U.S. So we spent last week, talking really solely about this, kind of monumental shift in the election with Biden dropping out, Harris now going to be the presumptive nominee, and all the things that go with it. So now we're in kind of week number 2.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, so now we're in week number 2 and watching this all develop. One of the things that's happened, at least initially, is I guess you could call it maybe a Harris honeymoon with the voters that are being polled. A lot of the polls are showing a tightening race. I know you watch Rasmussen. I've decided to look at Real Clear Politics, and they're showing a lot of tightness. Some races where Harris is pulled ahead, others which are now virtual tie. I don't see that necessarily as holding up. We've got 96 days left to go. That's not a lot of time, but still a lot of time. And Harris hasn't really said a whole lot to this point in time. He doesn't have a VP pick yet. She is kind of out there on the stump. But as you added to the opening this morning, they want to label the Republicans as weird. That seems to be their watchword or their thing right now, which is I don't know. I mean, I think it's weird just to use the word weird to call it weird. I mean, I don't know.
Right, well, you know, school kid taunt, right, which is the level that they communicate at. I don't see how the people with the, you know, we're not the people with the blue hair and the 94 tattoos and all that kind of stuff, right? That's them. That's not us. So, you know, I think it's sort of reflective of the thing. It's also who profile for me the voter who changes their mind because the Democrats called the Republicans weird. I don't really know who that voter is, right? I don't really see. One of the things that's happening now, and I think it explains all these numbers, is, you know, there were a lot of Democrats who had said, okay, we're not going to win. This is terrible. Biden's terrible. And it's kind of a lost cause. And they sort of given up hope, right? So Harris comes along, and the Democrats are like, okay, we have a real candidate now. Let's go. Okay, but independents are not coming their way. Republicans are certainly not coming their way. So they were behind, and now they're still behind. And it's not, you know, there's some tightening, and like you see these like morning consult polls and so forth where it's D plus 11. I saw one the other day, it was D plus 18. You know, it's like if you're, you know, so people understand what that means. The field, you know, they say the field, like everybody, like you're doing Ohio or whatever. I'm just giving an example. And they say the field is the people of Ohio are 24% Democrat, for example. And I'm just pulling out numbers. I don't know what they are. But if you're in your survey, you know, it's 38% Democrat, then that's a D plus 14 survey, right? You're not going to get a result that's reflective of the population if you know, have 14% more Democrats in there than are in the field, the people you're surveying. So, you know, that's what they're doing now. There's 2 or 3 of them that are trying to do it to try to bolster her numbers and make her look strong. But, you know, I think the morning consult was out with a bunch of them today that showed a lot of tightening, but it's D plus 9, right? So you're saying 9% more Democrats in the survey group than in the field. You know, these things, 9% is huge. I don't think that we're to the point yet. I mean, I think, you know, Poly market is still about 2-to-1 Trump. You know, the betting markets are still pretty much his way. RCP is Trump plus this trumpet 52, which means that, you know, he doesn't need any any of the squeeze, any of the undecideds to go his way to win. So, you know, I see him winning right now. I don't know about the popular vote, but he will certainly win the electoral college as things stand now. I think places where it helps her, it does help her in the marginal places like Minnesota and Virginia. We were talking about big, you know, muscling up, stretching that map and all that kind of stuff. She does put him back in the game in those places, although it may not last. I mean, the more people are going to listen to her talk, the less they're going to like her because the stuff she says doesn't make any sense.
All right, here's another comment from John.
Well, he did clarify that to some point. Laura Ingram, what he is saying is, it's a pretty bold claim, but what he's saying is, you know, I really need you this time. After this time, the problems will be taken care of to the extent that it won't matter, right? Whether you're enthusiastically come out next time, you know, won't matter, right? The foxhole is right now. So, you know, it's a weird way to say it. And Trump has some things he says that, you know, if you think about it, what he says is obvious, acceptable, whatever. But, you know, it's frameable the other way.
Yeah. So
he's not going to end elections and all that stuff. None of that's going to happen.
Yeah. So my wife watches a lot of different things on YouTube, you know, and you know, she came across the thing, which I think a lot of people have seen, that Musk retweeted this AI generated video of Kamala. And, you know, because Musk did this, it has like 100 million views. And there are a lot of complaints that violated X's or Twitter's standards of doing things. But I always think Twitter kind of the wild west anyway. That it's obvious that it was an AI generated kind of a thing. It's not. Nobody really thought it was believable, but it was pretty darn funny because it is so close to the truth of how Kamala speaks and what she wouldn't do.
Yeah, I haven't seen it. I've heard about it, but yeah, it's pretty funny. And I guess somebody got into this is illegal, this and that and the other, and he goes, "Buddy, parody is not illegal in the United States."
Exactly.
Come on.
Yeah, and when you've got Musk behind you, like him or not, I mean, it can be a very powerful force. I would rather have Musk on my side overall than not on my side overall, because his following is so huge, and people pay so much attention. People pay a lot of attention to what he says, in the end. So he draws a lot of attention.
And what is the constituency he represents? Right? Who are the people who are influenced by Musk? Right? Smart people. You see, you go in there, you go, like you say, X is wild west. No, Musk is an idiot. It's like, bro, and then they'll say he bought this thing for $44 billion. Like, my dream is to buy something for $44 billion one day. Because you know what you got to do to buy something for $44 billion? You got to have $44 billion, right? So,
yeah,
I mean, just
good point.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like the way you phrase that. It's like think about that. I mean, the overall the purchase has not been economically, was not a good thing for him. But the fact of the matter is that he was able to put the money together to buy it. How many people can say that they can do that?
That's right.
Not a lot.
Not a lot. Like it's, count them on one hand.
Yeah, so he did that, and so if you want to buy Twitter, you could have bought Twitter. I mean,
that's right. It was for sale.
It was out there.
Yeah, so, and what a good thing that he did, right? Because the our side of the story gets told, and it can't be ignored, and it gets told. It doesn't just get told; it gets told to the media people, right? Leftists are still on Twitter, the media, right? So and all the little Biden puppets, all their little drones that they send out to put internet copy on there. They're on Twitter. They can't get away from it, so they have to see your message.
So one of my concerns with this campaign right now is, I realize, like I said before, there's a honeymoon period here with Kamala and the Democrat. There's a lot of relief. Right? The stock market talks about things in terms of like a relief rally. When things there's people, the market makers and traders are like, oh well, we're glad these earnings or the economy wasn't that bad, so that it kind of bounces back, at least temporarily. So I kind of compare that to things like that. You have these dead cat bounces, all these kind of things that happen in the world, but it does seem to a certain extent that even though that Trump ran and beat Hillary in 2016, right, and so he's faced a woman before, I don't know. I just get a little feeling right now that even if they knew that this was probably coming, I'm not sure that they were really prepared for it. I don't know. I mean, I don't. The way they've approached the campaign so far, I don't know if they've done it really well strategically, because I think the name calling, calling her dumb, calling her husband a bad Jew or stuff like that. I think some of this stuff should not have been kind of typical Trump. We would have been better if he had not said those types of things. Focus once again on the issues. You focus on the issues. You focus on how she's done on the border. You focus on the fact that she's tied to all the Biden policies. That's what will win this election. name calling like that. It doesn't really win him voters. On the fringes, it probably loses him some.
The Frank Luntz did a focus group, what the issues that are working against her are. She knew Joe was senile and didn't say anything, and the 92% staff turnover. Those are the two biggest. And I think that they should say she can't manage. Right.
Yeah, and I think there was a campaign ad that talked about the fact that she was part of the grand cover-up, right? Because they have video of her talking about how Joe was of sound mind and body and everything like that, and we all knew he wasn't, and that's why he's not running again now. And the spot turnover, that would be an interesting issue because she was famous for that in terms of the turmoil in her own office about how difficult she is to get along with and how she treats her employees. So that's an interesting issue there too.
I think the way to talk about it is nobody likes her. Right, I think that is fair. It's better than dumb, right? Because dumb is subjective, right? You can say, okay, she says this and that thing that is dumb, therefore, right? But nobody likes her is pretty easy to prove, right? There's quotes from their Democratic senators out there who said nasty stuff about her. There are staffers starting to come out of the woodwork and go to Trump and say, how can we help you undermine her? So she made some enemies along the way and she didn't really care. So she's about to hear from them. Same person. Yes and no. Yeah, it's somewhat, and you get the same feeling when she talks, right? That she talks in an obnoxious, condescending manner, right? And not taken seriously by anyone who's a serious person. So, and I think that part is like Hillary.
Yeah. I don't know. Hillary. How do you classify the dislike of Hillary? It was to me it was much more universal. We saw her out there. There was a whole lot. She was definitely much more of a public persona, having spent time in the White House, time as Secretary of State. So she had a long-running political career in a sense. She was a U.S. senator. So she had all these things going for her. So there was a lot of dislike built up for her. I mean, Harris. She definitely is that. There's the negatives on her are still pretty big. Vice presidents. Sitting vice presidents really shouldn't have, in my mind, they really shouldn't have, that large, a negative on them. Because in theory, they're not really doing that much, right? They're doing a lot of ceremonial stuff. Why should you hate them for doing the ceremonial stuff? But Harris has built up a pretty large negative appeal. I don't necessarily think it's the same, but there are some things to consider that would be the same. When she talks, I think condescending. There is something I can't quite put my finger on. That when she speaks, I'm just like, it bothers the heck out of me.
Yeah.
And I want to give her a shot. I mean, in a sense, show me who you are.
Yeah. Give me something to latch onto.
Yeah.
But I don't really see it. It's like one thing you see is like her running away from a lot of her positions. Oh, it was strong on the border. No, you weren't. I am for fracking. No, you weren't. You can see her just like reversing because she knows that a lot of her stuff will not work. And while you see polls sliding toward her in, some of the upper, the blue wall states in the upper, in the north, right? You don't see Pennsylvania because I think they know better than, I think they heard her loud and clear last time.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, there is time. There is a time depending on which way you look at it. I expect that, really after the convention, give a little bit that. That's what I was saying.
Unlikable. Yeah,
I agree with that.
Yeah, I think the thing is to talk about that. Like, no one likes her.
Yeah.
Oh, well, we like her. We're Democrat. Well, You know, I mean, that way you're just like, okay, if you're a wild-eyed leftist, then yeah, she's okay. You know, but I mean, they also, I mean, she's back in it. She's going to be into their, you know, she's going to have to say something about immigration, right? Right. So far, she said nothing about it, right? All she said is, "Oh, it's not as bad as the Trump people say." Okay, but you know, what are you for? You're going to continue what Biden did, or are you going to try something else? Or are you going to loosen the border even more? Um, you know, there's really not a lot of good options for her. She can either repudiate what she's done for 4 years, or she can live with it. And there's really not a lot of, there's not a third choice, I don't think.
Yeah, I mean, if it comes out too strongly on the border, then it will be like, well, but you said this and you did this. You know, how do you justify all that? How do you reconcile these different positions? You know, so you know, there's always talk about candidates flip flopping. You know, she is definitely doing a lot of flip flops at this point in time, and she needs to be scrutinized for that, and not just it should not be a coronation for her as a candidate. You know, and somebody who just kind of slides into office, and then the rest of us all pay the price for that.
Right, that's right.
So, you know, I don't. You know, one of the other things too is that part of this enthusiasm, or whatever you want to call it, the honeymoon period, is that the money continues to roll in. But once again, I think if this was money that was on the sidelines, this is part of that relief that it's not Biden. You know, there's a lot of hope in that money that something good will happen with that. I can't imagine that the pace of this continues.
Well, I mean, they went out and did some, you know, their gimmicky thing with the, you know, the white women, the white men, the, you know, whatever for Harris dealios, right? First of all, you know, the rest of the country looks at that and says that's pretty divisive, you know. Why do we have a separate one for white dudes and white women and black women and all this stuff? Why would it be, if you're trying to bring us together, why would you sector it off like that, right? You know, and I just think anytime you do that, there's a big sector of the population that rolls their eyes and moves on, right? Because they don't think in those terms. You know, second of all, that's like you say, there's a lot of hope behind that money. Once that hope starts meeting the reality of, you know, Trump was ahead. He was fundamentally ahead. He's still ahead. Then it's you know, then you're like, oh wow, we did all this stuff and we really haven't changed the situation. And the more people like about her, the more people learn about her, the less they're going to like. You know, this is the high moment of her campaign. This is their moment in the sun right now.
Yeah, I mean, I'm almost. Well, I know I'm going to be cringing, you know, as we're a few weeks away from when she addresses the Democratic National Convention. I just don't know. I mean, that's supposed to be going to be a big highlight for her, you know, in her life and her career. But I don't know that she's going to be able to convince anybody but loyal Democrats that she's the one. You know,
right. That's right. I think the cross-party appeal is, you know, it's an illusion, right? You know, there's a few Adam Kinzingers in every crowd, but you know, I think the idea that she's going to bring the country together in any meaningful way, you know, I think Trump is actually a stronger candidate on getting people who are not traditional Republicans to vote Republican than she is at getting non-traditional Democrats to vote Democrat. So I could be wrong, but I think that's the way that's going to end up being.
Yeah, and I don't. You know, I mean, we, like in 2020, you know, we've said time and time again. I mean, it was more of an election of, you know, Joe Biden wasn't Donald Trump. You know, it was a lot of hatred of Donald Trump, and thanks to COVID, you know, Biden could basically hide, you know, in his home, in his basement, whatever. So they didn't. You know, there was not a lot of there was not a lot of traditional campaigning of any kind. So it was a very unusual election in that sense. This time around, this is not necessarily going to be like, you know, would you vote for Kamala because she's not Donald Trump?
Right.
I don't think so.
Yeah, I don't think that's really there. And you know, they're going to try to hide her as well as they can too. Right? She's not sat for a serious interview since all this happened, and you know, she's unlikely to sit for one between now and the convention. Right? She's she gives, a 20-minute speech every day, and that's her work day. What about this is eventually going to, demand more of her than a 20-minute speech every day, right? I mean, Trump's doing 2 rallies a day. You're going to have to up the pace.
Yeah, I mean, we're shifting from Biden, who loses his train of thought, kind of gets into that mumbles phase. We don't know what he's saying, stuff like that, to where Harris will inevitably fall back into her kind of word salad kind of things like this, where she'll kind of go into circular motion. And we're like,
she'll be helped some by the fact that she's got like the best handlers that Democrats can come up with trying to help her now. So the Biden people were pretty inept, but they've rushed the Axelrods to the front of the pack now to try to get her on the right track.
I was going to say I was going to check in on James Carville. Where's Carville with all this right now?
Well, I mean, I think Carville is, I think he sees that she's not necessarily going to beat Trump, right? I think he's sort of sounding that alarm now, and he's saying, if you're going to do it, you're going to have to quit staking out unpopular stuff.
Yeah, so that'll be interesting. I think that's also a barometer when we can look at people like Carville, who steeped in this politics for a long time, to see what he's saying about this. I think he tries to remove himself from a lot of the noise and say, hey, this is Trump versus Harris, and they candidates are flawed, but Harris is not the best nominee that the Democrats could have put forth, but the Democrats' bench isn't all that deep in terms of national politics. That's where we're going to go to begin with. So this is clear the decks for 2028, and hope you don't get slaughtered this time around.
Right, and save some down ballot races.
Right. I mean, that's really what it comes to. I think is that Harris on the ballot may save some down ballot races, whereas Biden, I think they were in big trouble down ballot as well. With him. So
they may yet be. I mean, I see him. As it gets closer to the election, right, she's going to get seriously covered, and it's that will not redound to her benefit, I don't think.
Yeah, and you were mentioning these kind of segmented things. You had this, had some, what was it? Was it Jeff Bridges participated in the actor participated in the white dudes for Harris and stuff like that? And like, why are they doing it? And why do the Democrats do this? Because they are the party of identity politics. Right. This is their thing. And that's another thing that Republicans can kind of highlight too, is that identity politics is part of the mantra of the Democrats. This is what they do. They are trying to divide us. They are not trying to unite us.
Right.
Obama said he was going to unite us, and it hasn't happened. It's been their identity politics has driven us further apart than we ever have before. And Trump could probably he could probably reunite us to an effect, but it isn't Harris that's going to bring us together, because their outward practice of identity politics only continues to drive us further apart.
Right. If you notice, what Trump talks about is what he would actually do as president, right? And it's not about who likes me and how do I get the other people to like me. It's here are the policies, right? Here's the offering. Here's what you actually get for your money. And, hers is and it's like that kind of goes back to, calling us weird, right? She's trying to build a clique, right? And this is not, you're not going to build a clique that wins a presidential election. It doesn't work that way.
One thing she needs to do is, she needs to shore up the support, among the blacks and the Latinos.
Right, who've not moved her direction. There's the early polling that shows that, you would think, oh, okay, well, I was thinking about voting for Trump, but now that it's Harris, I will totally change my mind. That's not really happening.
Yeah, and that would also be part of identifying. We've got a black woman who must, and you're black. You must vote for the black woman, right?
Right. Right. That's dumb, and I think people realize that's dumb.
maybe that's what Trump was referring to as dumb. It's just the dumb strategy more than anything else.
Yeah.
How they're it doesn't they're calling us weirdos together. Talk about look at their side, look at our side. Both sides have odd people.
Oh yeah.
But, right. I mean, you can't avoid that. But who are the people that are sitting front and center that are supporting the Democrats and then daring to call us weird? I mean, they are the weirdest of the weird.
Yeah. Go to their rallies. You want to see some weirdos, right?
Yeah. So if you want to call me weird, that's fine. I don't really care. But I don't understand this as a strategy to try to win an election. Is calling the other side weird. That in and of itself is, we want to talk about issues. Talk about the voters don't care about weird. I don't think, right?
Right. I think that I read this morning somebody said this is already starting to die down because the Democrats looked at it and they're like, well, people didn't really like that. It didn't move a lot of people our way.
Yeah. So it has come and gone. So we're still waiting to see what Kamala is doing on the vice presidential side. So Rory Cooper. So I was listening to the 538 podcast the other day. I hadn't heard this before, but I hadn't paid a lot of attention to it. So Rory Cooper pronounces his name Cooper.
Okay.
So he prefers to go by Cooper. But now it doesn't really matter because he doesn't want to be VP anyway.
He's about to go by unemployed.
Well, he probably, maybe he's looking at things like, I will make more money as a former governor of North Carolina, go into the lobbying world, whatever, consulting world, right? People will hire me, to do that, than join a likely losing ticket, for the national race. Let that be.
Right. It may not, and if you think about like the coalition that elected him, right? That's not the coalition that Harris is trying to tap into. That's for sure.
Yeah, I mean, she could use more support in North Carolina, right? But where's Cooper's sway or pull beyond that? So then, what does he bring to the ticket? It's getting harder to figure out exactly what you want in a VP, and who's that perfect ideal person.
Right. Because it's like the thing about you're going to help me with some state or the other, not really anymore, right? These things are national. Everybody knows everybody. On the margins, maybe, so like Trump, the Trump people say, and with some accuracy, that Vance helps them in the upper Midwest, right? And he's a working class guy, and hillbilly elegy and all that kind of stuff. But it's not, he was already going to win Ohio, right? I mean, Biden was barely on the ballot in Ohio. So it's not delivering a state anymore. It's more like delivering a constituency, right? You're the kind of voters who support this guy, we want to add to our coalition. Okay. So she's not, so who's available to her now? Shapiro, which is a problem because he's Jewish. I mean, she said a bunch of stuff, about where she is on Israel and so forth, that it's going to be hard to walk back, and it's going to be hard to fit him under that tent. Newsom said no. A bunch of them have said no, right? And I guess Tim Walz is just groveling for it, right? Governor of Minnesota. He's just going around saying every pro-Kamala thing he can think of to try to get on the ballot. It's really kind of, he's kind of pathetic. I don't know if they can somebody's tongue's hanging out that far. I don't know if you can really do that in politics because it's dangerous, right? So I don't know. I mean, I don't know what they're going to do. My guess right now is it will be Walz.
Yeah, I agree with on the constituency thing, because look at the Republicans in particular, who they picked as VP, candidates. It wasn't, Paul Ryan, Mike Pence, these guys. They weren't picked because they were going to bring in the state. They were there to bring in a constituency, right?
Right.
The people who didn't see Romney as conservative enough, that type of thing. The people who didn't see Trump as conservative. You find a good, solid, person who's in a conservative field. I'm still, I think Palin was she really
an atrocity by a terrible candidate.
Yeah,
terrible candidate made a terrible decision. End of story.
Yeah,
right.
I mean, at first, I still remember that night with Palin, and at first I thought, oh, well, okay, this is kind of, maybe this works and stuff like that, but it quickly unraveled, I think.
Right.
And so that then just doomed the ticket at that point in time. But yeah, I think and with Vance, it's now more. He looks at a young guy who will continue the MAGA legacy. He's got a lot of other interesting things, like you said, the whole working class guy. He is kind of, he's a union kind of guy. He has he's been involved in venture capital in California. So he's had his hands in a lot of different things.
Yeah, he's also married to one woman, has kids, does the whole pro-family stuff, which Trump believes in and talks about. But he's been married 3 times. His personal life is kind of messy, so it's kind of hard to. I do think it's interesting though. Just someone brought it up this morning talking about Trump's wife is buried on one of his on the golf course right at Bedminster. Ivanka, what was her name? What was the first one? Ivanka something.
Well. Yeah, it's almost the same as his daughter. His daughter is Ivanka, so then she was like Ivana or something. Anyway.
Ivana, right. So, and Marla Maples has offered to help him. So, the other 2 wives, they got along with Trump, even after they were the messy divorce and the, unfaithfulness in the marriage and so forth. So, he's doing something that, like, as a person, that these people, they don't come away hating him, so I think that's interesting. As far as Vance wants to hang the intellectual meat on the bones of MAGA, right? He wants to come along and make this a governing philosophy that endures. Right, and sort of write a guidebook for it, right? It's sort of like, if you're MAGA, these are the things you're for, these are the changes you're trying to bring about, so forth, and get MAGA on the same page. Because one criticism that is fair of it is that the definition is loose, right? They don't have discipline in terms of the definition of MAGA. Right, so if you don't have it nailed down, then who nails it down? Your enemy, right? So I think Vance's goal is to come out of this with a mandate for leadership type of publication that's MAGA, that's not Heritage or anybody else, but that is the intellectual underpinnings of MAGA. So it'll be, I know there's people out there going, what intellectual? But there is a lot. There is a way of doing things that is very different from, or somewhat different from traditional conservatism. Like, tariffs aren't automatically a bad word, to MAGA. It's been used effectively. You go back and look at what Kevin Hassett has said about that, AEI. He worked for Trump, and he's like, I was a full-on free marketer. I hate tariffs in every form. And Trump convinced me to try it, and I tried it, and I have to admit he was right. So they do have, that is a way to govern, and that is a way of getting your way, exerting power on the world stage, that we should not be doctrinaire and necessarily, reject out of hand, right? The tariff itself may not be, poison.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're going to have to, like everything else, you've got to be very careful with the tariffs, because where it plays into inflation and things like that. If they're trying to really get that inflation back down, how will tariffs play a part in that? If you have tariffs that are too high on certain goods.
Well, I mean, Trump put them all on there, and he finished office with 1.4% inflation. So it can work, right? Not necessarily will work, but it can work.
Yeah, my question will be that we now have a lot of tariffs in place. Still, I mean, Biden didn't, he kept a lot of those tariffs in place, and he's proposed other tariffs as well. So if Trump gets back into office, you know, since inflation is once again, as they say, it's cooling. But it's still high. Higher than where it was when Trump left office. Will Trump be able to use the levers of tariffs and drive inflation down from the levels now? That's it's one thing. It's one thing when you've had low inflation, maybe it pops up a little bit under the administration, but you still leave with very reasonable inflation. Now you've got higher inflation. You're trying to drive it back down. Our tariffs are minus. I mean, I think we have to see how that plays out under a Trump administration. I will be very curious for that. I don't really have an idea of how that will work, but we will see. I think we will see shortly probably how this will all be, because people are sick and tired of inflation, and they want to see that number down below 2%. They want to see it back to kind of the Trump years, where they didn't really have to think about it, rather than face all these high costs of everything. I mean, we're seeing the fast food wars, right? I mean, all the fast food chains, for the most part, they've launched one version or another of some kind of value meal, right? I mean, McDonald's, they've had their $5 thing. They're going to extend it beyond their initial promotion period. Wendy's has had a $5 meal for a while. Burger King has jumped in, and some of the other ones have been fashioning various things along those lines, because McDonald's, when they announced their earnings the other day, they said, the consumer is getting weary. They're tired of paying these higher prices, so they're trying to find a way of putting out a product, feeding people, where they can still make a profit, and the franchise can make a profit. But it doesn't get to the $15 headline Big Macs or whatever going around, which is regional. A lot of that stuff is regional. But of course, Gavin Newsom hasn't helped things in California with his mandated $20 minimum wage, hour minimum wage that has forced cutbacks and all kinds of things. One thing you can count on is that there are going to be fewer jobs in the fast food industry as they combat all this between inflation, in general, and then wage inflation that's been mandated in the blue states. AI will continue to take over. I mean, how many fast food places do you walk into now that you can actually order from the counter right away, versus where they try to say order from the kiosk? I mean, I went to Taco Bell for the first time in years, and there was a sign that's like, please use the kiosk, right? Yeah. That's where they want you to go. They don't want you to go to the counter. They're basically saying, go to the kiosk, we'll fill your order. If you have a problem, you come to the counter, we'll send somebody up to the counter eventually.
Right. It's like we go to a Sonic out in Manassas when we do basketball out there, and there's no one at the counter. There's a little bell like the hotels, ding, 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 and somebody will come out eventually. I mean, they have no intention of waiting on you at the counter unless they absolutely have to.
I love Sonic. Sonic is so much of a throwback. When they have
it's great, man. Right? But we don't. You got one in Frederick, right? But there's no, and there's one in Manassas, and those are the closest ones. I mean, it's awful.
Yeah. So the only Sonic I've been to two Sonics in my lifetime, right? One in Utah, one in Indiana. There's one not far away from where my daughter lives. So I always, at least when they used to have the promotion, which I assume is gone now, which was the between 4 and 8, or after 8 they had the half price shakes or whatever. I would zip on over there and buy shakes for the kids, grandkids and stuff like that. So anyway. So, all right. Somehow I managed to talk my way out of this program. All right. One quick last thing. Does Trump debate Harris?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, he will. I mean, it's necessary, and it's very good too, because people think that she knows more about the issues than he does, and they will be disabused of that notion in fantastic fashion on that night.
Yeah. So is that going to be the ABC debate, or is he going to look for something else?
I mean, I don't know. He'll put,
Right.
you know.
I mean, I think then he said that ABC was terrible or something.
Who was terrible?
That ABC was terrible. That's one of the reasons for not committing right now.
Yeah, but he, you know, something will get worked out. He definitely will want to have his say, and it's untenable politically to not do it. So he'll do it.
I kind of wonder whether or not he's going to wait until after she gives her acceptance speech at the DNC convention to see where we're going with that news, you know, and all these things, and then say, okay, now we're in the last, you know, less than 60 days or whatever the campaign, 50 days, and then let's do it. And everything. By then, once again, I think a lot of things will be baked into the cake, and the debate will not be a high risk proposition for him. So
right, but it is for her because she has to show she can do it. I mean, he's already mopped the floor with one Democrat candidate this cycle. Right. That's one more than she's ever won a debate against.
All right. Well, let's wrap it up. Finish us off here.
Let's see. What else do we have on our list? Where's our list? Paris opening ceremonies. So, you know, that didn't go well. So they mocked the Last Supper, and they claimed it was Dionysus or some kind of Dionysus or whatever, and, you know, which was an obvious lie, and they got exposed on that. And, you know, but you can see all the like little liberal turtles came out and said, yes, that was Dionysus. Don't you know your literature? Right. You don't know yours either. Right. Because, you know, they took iconic photos of, you know, the Last Supper and mocked that. Right. So it's like, it's not a question of what they did or how or why they did it. It's, you know, just a question of what you're willing to admit. So that is one thing that they should have done. The other thing is, national debt hit 35 trillion. By my, you know, Trump added what, 7 trillion to the debt, and it was 29 trillion when he started, or it was 20. I'm sorry, it was 27 trillion when he started. So I believe now Biden has added more to the debt than Trump. I wonder if you will read that in the paper anywhere. I don't think that you will. What else did we have on here?
The other thing with that is that whether or not it's the national debt or whether or not it's the budget deficit, we don't hear a peep out of the Democrats anymore. You know, for a while there, Biden was saying that how he lowered, you know, the deficit. They don't talk about it.
Right. It's because it's they've totally outspent Trump, right? And for I mean, Trump was trying to fight a pandemic. They're trying to clean up their own messes. So that's what I have.
All right. Yeah. So I just want to say, you know, for the Olympics, I tune in every once in a while, streaming on Peacock. I was thinking the other day how interesting it is to watch these Olympics because, you know, once again, we have another Olympics without an official team from Russia. You know, and there was an article the other day, I think in the journal, that, you know, they can be represented. I mean, they can, I guess, be from Belarus and other things. That they have to swear that they're not supporting Russia, the war in Ukraine, that kind of stuff like that to compete, but they don't get flagged and things like that. But a lot of Russian athletes are in the Olympics, just not as officially as Russia.
I'm good with that. You know, it's not their fault.
But it's a very different Olympics than, you know, that I was used to in the past, where the Russia and the U.S. are always battling.
Our best competition.
Yeah. So it's a very changed setting. But we have a lot of great athletes participating for the U.S. this year. So go Team USA.
Yeah, won the gold in women's gymnastics. Houston's Simone Biles leading the way. So
yeah, the first gymnastics medal for the men since 2008.
Yeah,
and even the women, the rugby sevens, they won a medal as time expired. Just wild stuff going on. We love it. Olympics are great. I mean, it's watching the world there. It's wonderful. So anyway, thanks everyone for joining us. Hope you thought it was useful and fun and entertaining. As always, please stay safe and stay well. Remember, you live in the greatest country in the world. Do not let anyone tell you otherwise. And God bless America, and we will see you again next week.